Magandang araw mga bata! Ako si Ma'am Regine, ang teacher mo sa math. Today we will be learning about frequency distribution. This is a lesson for grade 7 mathematics under quarter 4, lesson 3. Kaya tara na, and let's do the math. How are data organized? In the previous lessons, we've learned about the data, its definition and importance to statistics, as well as the ways on how we can organize the data. In this lesson, we've learned about another way on how we can organize the data. We have here a situation tallying votes in an election. These three are tally sheets in an election. The first one, this is a tally sheet in a classroom or school election. This one is a tally sheet in a local election, barangay election. And the last one is a tally sheet in national election. Comparing the three tally sheets together, we can notice that they have similarities and differences. Yung kanilang similarities, looking at them closely, mapapansin natin na lahat sila ay may mga columns at ang column na ito, yung first one ay para doon sa name ng candidates. They also have columns for the tally marks, meaning kung ilan yung bumoto para sa specific candidate na ito, pati na rin yung numeric equivalent ng mga tally marks na ito. Tallying votes in an election, the tally sheets, these are example of constructing a frequency distribution. And what is a frequency distribution? Here are some of the important terms that we need to take note of when constructing a frequency distribution. A frequency distribution is a table that shows the frequencies for the categories or the values of a counting variable or class intervals. And also, a frequency distribution is one of the ways on how we can organize the data. Going back, we have here an example word problem. Jessica is a certified plantita. She surveyed 20 households in their barangay and found out the number of varieties of plants they own. The results are the following: 301, 441, 202, 202, 013, 1211, and 3. What we'll need to do is to construct a frequency distribution for the data that Jessica has collected. We have a few steps. Step 1, create a table with 3 columns. Then label each column as the first one with the title of the categories, second with tally, and the third column with frequency. So ito yung ating nagawang table. Meron tayong 3 columns. First column natin, title of the categories. Yung second natin ay tally. At yung ating pangatlong column ay for frequency. For the title of the categories, we'll have to be more specific. Kaya papalitan natin ito ng number of varieties of plants. Because these data, this is all about the number of varieties of plants in each 20 households in the barangay. Kaya papalitan natin yung title of the categories ng specific na topic nitong data na ito. But what is a tally and what is a frequency? Tally is the record of sticks that gives the value for frequency. And frequency is the number of times an observation or a particular value appears in a dataset. In this case, ito yung ating tally column at ito naman yung ating frequency column. Next step, write the categories of the result gathered in the first column. Kung ilan yung ating i-construct na rows, nakadepende yun sa dami ng ating data. So, mapapansin natin, meron tayong 3, may 0, may 1, may 4, at may 2. So, therefore, bibilang tayo ng 5 rows para ilagay natin yung mga values na ito. Lagay natin yung values na 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Hanggang dun lang dahil ang lowest natin dito ay 0 lang naman at ang highest natin ay 4 lang. As for writing these results in the first column, you can choose if you'll have to write it like this in an increasing order or pwede rin na decreasing order, whichever to you is preferable. Next step, tally the numbers in each category based on the data gathered in the survey. So dito, in each row, itatali na natin kung ilang 0 ang lumabas, ilang 1, 2, 3, and 4. Ilalagay natin yun dito sa ating tally column. First, 3, lagay natin. Meron tayong isang tally for 3. 0, 1, 4, 4, 1, 2, 0, 2, 2, 0, 2, 0, 1, 3, 1, 2. Pansinin natin mga bata na pag tayo ay nandoon na sa ating 5th na tally, instead of writing another stick, maglalagay tayo ng slash to cross it out para mas madali natin siyang mabilang by 5s. Ganon din yung gagawin natin sa 1 dahil pang 5 stick na ito. Next, 1 ulit. Maglalagay tayo ng hyphen bago tayo maglagay ng another stick para makita natin yung difference at hindi tayo malito kapag tayo ay nagbibilang na. And then, last frequency natin ay 3. Next step, count the sticks in the tally column and write the frequency on the 3rd column. So, ito yung ating tally column. Bibilangin natin isa-isa per row kung ilan yung naging tally natin para sa mga result na ito. And then yung numeric value, ilalagay natin sa frequency column. For 0, ang nabilang natin ay 4. 4 sticks. 1, 2, 3, 4. Kaya ilagay natin dito ay 4. Para sa 1, 6. Ito ay 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And merong isa. Kaya 6. Para sa 2, meron tayong 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Bundled together. Sa 3, meron tayong 3 na nakuwang frequency. At sa 4, meron tayong nakuha na 2. So, dapat mga bata, pansinin natin na ang ating tally column, kung ilan yung ating nakuwang sticks, dapat ganun yung kanyang frequency. And the total is 20. So, itong 20 na to, this is what we call the n value. This is the total number of frequencies in a set of data. Kung ilan iyong ating data dito, dapat iyon din yung lalabas nating total ng ating frequencies. Kapag tayo ay gumagawa ng frequency distribution, it is very important na kung ilan yung ating tally sticks or tally marks, iyon din yung frequency natin, dapat pareho yung value. At kapag tinutal natin ang lahat ng mga frequencies, kung ilan yung ating n value, ilan yung data given, dapat iyon din yung ating total. Step 5, finalize the table. Make sure to write a title. Ito na yung ating table. Kompleto na ito. Sigurado na tayong tama yung ating data, tama yung ating pagkakatali. It's time for us to write a title. Frequency distribution of the number of varieties of plants of 20 households. In making a title, make sure that the title is concise. Kapag binasa mo yung title, you'll know right away what the data is all about. This is an example of a frequency distribution for an ungrouped data. Ungrouped data, it means that it's gathered from raw data that are not sorted into categories. So, mapapansin natin, ito yung ating tinatawag na raw data, meaning magulo pa siya, hindi pa siya naaayos into a table. Ito, frequency distribution ito, meaning ayos na siya. Naayos na natin siya into a table, organized data na siya, pero ungrouped. Dahil yung ating mga nandito, mga categories ay solo-solo lamang, hindi siya bundled together, individual lang siya. Kaya ungrouped data. Aside from an ungrouped data, meron tayong isa pang type of data which is what we call a group data. And we have another way on how we can construct a frequency distribution for a grouped data. Let's have an example. Construct a frequency distribution table based on the following data set. This is a data set for final math grades of 20 grade 7 students for the school year 2019 to 2020. First step, we have to create a table with 3 columns and then label each column as the title of the categories, tally, and frequency. Pareho lang ito dun sa step 1 natin kung paano tayo nag-construct ng frequency distribution para sa ungrouped data. But this time, group data yung ating gagawa ng frequency distribution and we'll see the difference between the two. Ito yung ating 3 columns muna. First column natin, title of the categories. Second column, tally. And then the third column ay para sa frequency. Step 2, identify the number of frequency in the dataset and determine the number of classes. Again, for the number of frequency, alam natin na ito yung ating n value. Ilan yung mga data nandito sa ating raw dataset. Bibilangin natin yan lahat. Kung ilan sila, ayun yung ating number of frequency or n value. Once alam na natin yung ating n value, we have to determine the number of classes. But what is classes? What is this classes all about? Class is a category for grouping of data. Ibinibigay na doon sa word problem kung ilang classes yung kailangan i-construct sa specific frequency distribution na ito. Or pwede rin naman na mag-assign ka na lamang ng number of classes whichever you think is suitable para doon sa distribution. However, if you don't have any idea, you can try to use this formula, which is the square root of n, where n stands for the n value. Going back, column na title of categories ay papalitan na natin ng classes dahil dito natin ilalagay yung ating mga classes. Ilang classes ba yung ating magagawa for this raw data? We have to know its n value, which is 20. For this raw data, meron tayong 20 na piraso ng data. Yun yung ating n value. At nabanggit kanina, if you don't have any idea for the number of classes, you can try this formula to help you out. Square root of n. In the instruction about constructing the frequency distribution out of this raw data, wala namang nailagay kung ilang classes yung kanyang required. Ang pwede natin gawin dito ay mag-set na lang kung ilang classes yung gusto natin. Say for example, 5 classes or 10 classes. Pwede naman yun. So long as we think that it's appropriate when we tally the frequency. Pwede tayong mag-set kung ilang number of classes yung gusto natin. But if you don't have any idea, feel free to use this formula to help you out. For square root of n, we have to substitute n with the n value, which is 20. Kaya meron tayong square root of 20, which is an irrational number, meaning wala siyang saktong result, wala siyang value na sakto talaga, irrational number ito. Ang kanyang approximate na result or value ay 4.5. What you'll have to do is to round it off in a whole number and we get 5. Kaya, pwede tayong gumawa ng 5 classes para dito sa ating data na ito. At dahil 5 classes yung ating gagawin, we need to include 5 rows and yung ating 6th row ay para sa total. Next step, identify the lowest and the highest frequency in the data set. When we say lowest and highest frequency, lowest frequency is the minimum value in a set of data. And the highest frequency is its total opposite, the maximum value in a set of data. Going back, ito yung ating raw data. Yung ating lowest frequency or minimum value, pinakamababang value ay 76. Dahil wala namang lower than 76 sa mga grades na ito. Walang 75 and below. 76 na yung ating lowest. And yung highest natin ay 96. There are no grades higher than 96. Walang 97 and above. Kaya ang highest frequency natin ay 96. Once we're able to identify these, pwede na natin yung ilagay dito sa ating column for the classes. Ilalagay ko ang 76 dito at ang ating highest frequency na 96 sa taas naman. Ang aking magiging setup ay in a decreasing order. Next step, determine the class interval and complete the list of classes. But what is a class interval? A class interval is the numerical width of any class in a particular distribution. Ang class interval, just like number of classes, usually you can just decide on how many class intervals you want for that specific distribution. Pero if you don't have any idea on how many class intervals can you make, you can follow this other definition of a class interval, which is the ratio of the range and the number of classes. Alam na natin yung number of classes, this is the n value. But what is the range? Range is the difference of the highest and the lowest frequency. So going back sa ating distribution table, again for this set of raw data, ang ating highest frequency ay 96 at ang ating lowest ay 76. For class intervals, just like classes, pwede tayong mag-assign na lamang kung ilang class interval ang gusto natin for this distribution. So long that it would follow these conditions. First, it must not be overlapping. Second, you have to exhaust all the values in the data. And it must have same class width. But if you don't have any idea on how many class intervals you can set for this frequency distribution, you can follow yung other definition of a class interval, which is being a ratio of the range and the number of classes. You can only use this as a guide. So, ang number of classes natin kanina ay 5. At ang range natin, ito ay highest frequency minus the lowest frequency. Highest frequency natin 96 minus 76 lowest frequency. Kaya naman ang range natin for this set of raw data ay 20. Meron na tayong value for number of classes at meron na rin tayo for range. Class interval, yung guide natin kung ilan yung ating pwedeng iset as class interval. Ratio or the quotient of range and the number of classes. Substitute natin. Range natin ay 20, number of classes ay 5. Therefore, ang ating class interval ay 4. From this result, pwede tayong mag-add ng 4 doon sa ating mga classes. So, from 76, dagdag tayo ng 4. Ang ating interval, class interval 76 to 80. Ganun din yung gawin natin sa 96. Add tayo ng 4, magiging 96 to 100. Huwag tayo malilito mga bata, itong ginawa natin na formula na ito ay panulong lamang para makapag-set tayo ng class interval. Pero ang class interval natin ay ito, 76 to 80, 96 to 100. Ito ay mga classes. So aside from that, ang sabi rito sa isang condition, it must not be overlapping. Kaya naman, hindi dapat na mag-overlap or hindi dapat magsama sa two class intervals ang iisang number. Kaya after 80, start from 81 and then add 4. 81 to 85. Pansinin na, ang 80 ay nandito lamang sa class interval na ito. Ang 81 ay nandito lamang sa class interval na ito. At ganun din yung ibang values na nasa loob niya. It does not overlap. Aside from that, after 85, para hindi mag-overlap, add 1. Kaya 86, add 4, kaya 86 to 90. Aside from that, meron pa tayo isa, 91 to 95, at syempre yung ating 96 to 100. Ito na yung ating na-form mga class intervals from the top in a decreasing order, 96 to 100, 91 to 95, 86 to 90, 81 to 85, at 76 to 80. Yun yung ating mga class intervals. Meron tayong 5 classes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Kaya naman, yung iba, for this column, nilalagyan nila ito instead of classes ay class interval. And that's okay. Next step, determine the class limits, the lower and the upper. But what are class limits? Class limits are the smallest and the largest observations in each class. Yung ating smallest observation ay lower class limit at yung ating largest observation ay upper class limit. Kaya naman from these class intervals, we can determine the class limits for each class. Magdadagdag tayo ng 2 columns para sa class limits. Itong mga nasa left side na numbers ng ating hyphen, ito yung mga lower class limits. At ito namang mga nasa right side, ito naman yung ating mga tinatawag na upper class limits. Kada class or kada class interval, meron tayong specific na class limit. Meron tayong lower and upper class limit. So for this class interval, say for example, 96 to 100, ang ating lower class limit ay 96. At ang ating upper class limit ay 100. For the next class interval, 91 to 95, lower class limit natin ay 91 at ang ating upper class limit ay 95. For the class interval, 86 to 90, 86 ang lower at 90 naman ang upper class limit. For the class interval 81 to 85, 81 ang lower class limit, 85 ang upper class limit, and lastly, for the class interval 76 to 80, 76 ang ating lower class limit at ang ating upper class limit ay 80. Aside from not overlapping, isa pang condition para tayo makapag-set ng class interval ay it must exhaust all the values in the data. Meaning, lahat dapat ng mga data dito sa set of raw data na ito dapat ay belonging into one of each classes. So, for example, yung ating lowest frequency na 76, it belongs to this class interval. Yung ating 96 na highest frequency, it belongs to this class interval. Mapapansin natin, meron tayo ditong upper limit na 100 pero wala naman tayong raw data na 97, 98, 99, and 100. And that's okay. So long as we have a class interval to exhaust all the values in the data set. Kasi kung hindi natin ilalagay itong class interval na 96 to 100, pero ang highest frequency natin ay 96, hindi siya magiging possible, hindi magiging accurate or tama yung ating frequency distribution dahil meron tayong value in the raw data na hindi na-exhaust dito sa ating mga class intervals. Next, aside from these two conditions in constructing a class interval, it must also have the same class width. Class width is the difference of two consecutive upper limits or lower limits. To make sure that we have the same class widths for this frequency distribution, we have to follow the formula. So, upper limit 1 minus upper limit 2. You can choose whichever upper limit so long as they are consecutive. Pwede rin naman na lower limit 1 minus lower limit 2 so long as they are consecutive as well. So, in this case, for class width, ang pinili natin ay 100 and 95. 100 from this class interval 96 to 100 at 95 ay from the class interval 91 to 95. So, consecutive sila magkatabi. Pwede ring 95 to 90, 90 to 85, at pwede ring 85 at 80. Ang hindi lang pwede ay pag hindi sila magkadikit, say 100 and 90, that's not possible. Dapat consecutive. Ganun din kapag lower limits. So, mag-subtract tayo. Perform the operation. 100 minus 95. The class width is 5. Using lower limits, gagamitin naman natin ay 96 to 91. 96 ay from the class interval 96 to 100 at 91 ay from class interval 91 to 95. 96 minus 91, it's equal to 5. So, dapat parehong 5. And then, it must be 5 all throughout. Ang class width natin for this frequency distribution ay dapat laging 5. Aside from the class width, we also have the class size. Mga bata, wag tayong malilito between a class width and a class size. For the class size, it's the difference of the upper and lower limits in each class. It's upper limit minus lower limit in each class or class interval. So for example, we'll be using this class interval 96 to 100. Upper limit 100, lower limit natin 96. Then perform the operation, 100 minus 96 is equal to 4. Kaya naman, for this frequency distribution, ang class width natin 5. Pero ang class size natin ay 4. As a summary, we have the number of classes, which is 5. 5 classes tayo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Our class width is 5. Ito yung na-compute natin kanina for 2 consecutive upper limits or 2 consecutive lower limits. For the number of classes and the class width, it doesn't necessarily need na pareho sila. Sometimes, they are different and that's fine. At yung ating class interval naman ay 5. Because in this frequency distribution, we have these 5 groups or 5 bundles. Ito yung ating mga class intervals. Yung 4 kanina na na-compute natin from the quotient of range and the number of classes, it's just a guide para makabuo tayo ng class interval. Pero ang ating number of class intervals ay 5. Always remember that the number of class intervals is the same number of classes. Kung meron tayong 5 classes, meron din tayong 5 class intervals. And then the class size is 4. Tulad na ating nabanggit kanina, class size is different from a class width. The values in each class, we have 5. Say for example, in the class interval 96 to 100, ang values natin for this specific class or class interval ay 96, 97, 98, 99, and 100. We have 5 possible values in one class interval 96 to 100. Step 6, complete the tally column. So we will be basing our tally in this set of raw data. Starting from top to bottom, left to right. Pero you can choose whichever way you want so long as we have to exhaust all the values in this data set. Let's start. We have 78. It belongs to the class interval 76 to 80. 83 ay nasa paloob ng 81 to 85. 92 sa 91 to 95 na class interval. 86 ay nasa 86 to 90 na class interval. Of course, 96, ito ay yung ating highest frequency, nasa 96 to 100 na class interval. 90, 81, 89, 91, 79, 86, 88, ito yung ating pang-5, kaya gagawa tayo ng slash para bundle together by 5. 84, 85, 85. So, pang 5 din yun, kaya gawa ulit tayo ng slash para bundle together. 80. 87. Pang-6 ito, kaya gawa muna tayo ng hyphen, tapos isa ulit stick. 82, ganun din. 88, and yung ating lowest frequency na 76. We're done in completing the tally column. Proceed to step 7. Record the total frequency in each class interval. So, for this class interval, 96 to 100, yung ating tally ay isang stick lang, kaya 1 yung frequency. For 91 to 95 na class interval, yung tally natin ay 2 sticks, kaya 2. For 86 to 90, we have 7. 81 to 85, we have 6. And 76 to 80, we have 4. Add them all together, ang total dapat ay 20. Dahil yung end value natin ay 20. Meron tayong 20 na piraso rito ng raw data. Kaya dapat mag-tally siya for 20. And of course, yung ating tally column at yung ating frequency dapat ay parehong-pareho. Step 8, determine the class mark. Magdadagdag tayo ng isang column for class mark. Class mark is the middle value that may serve as the representative of the interval. For class mark, ito yung ating formula, upper limit plus lower limit divided by 2. In each class ito. Say for example, in this class interval, 96 to 100, 100 plus 96 divided by 2. 100 plus 96 ay 196, divided by 2, ang sagot natin ay 98. And this formula is applicable to the other class intervals for you to get their specific class mark. Aside from following a formula, pwede rin naman yung listing method. So, in this class interval, 96 to 100, ito yung ating mga values. 96, 97, 98, 99, and 100. Middle value ang class mark. So, ang middle value natin in this case ay 98. Therefore, ang class mark natin for the class interval 96 to 100 is 98. For 91 to 95, ang class mark natin ay 93. 86 to 90, ang class mark ay 88. 81 to 85, ang class mark ay 83. And lastly, ang class mark natin ay 78 para sa class interval na 76 to 80. Step 9, determine the class boundaries, the lower and the upper class boundaries. The class boundaries are the smallest and the largest value that can go in a class which avoid the gaps between class intervals, wherein ang ating smallest boundary, smallest na value natin in each class ay lower class boundary at ang ating largest value for each class ay upper class boundary. To find the class boundary, we have a specific formula. For every lower class boundary, you need to subtract 0.5 from the lower class limit, while for the upper class boundary, you need to add 0.5 to each of the upper class limit. Going back to our frequency distribution, you need to add 2 more columns para sa ating class boundaries. Ito ay para sa lower class boundary, itong column na ito. At yung ating last column ay para naman sa upper class boundary. Kunin muna natin yung lower class boundary. Tignan natin yung ating mga lower class limits. For the class interval, 96 to 100 ang lower class limit ay 96, kaya ang lower class boundary ay 95.5. We only subtracted 0.5. Ganon din dito sa ating pangalawang lower class limit na 91. Subtract 0.5, 90.5. 85.5 galing sa 86. 80.5 galing naman sa 81. At lastly, 75.5 galing naman dito sa 76. For upper class boundary naman, titignan natin yung mga upper class limits. And we need to add 0.5 to each of them. Starting from 100, magiging 100.5, 95.5, 90.5, 85.5, and lastly, we have 80.5. Ang class boundary, yung main function niya is to avoid any gaps. And once we're done with step 9, proceed tayo sa ating last step. Step 10, finalize the table and make sure to write a title. Title natin for this frequency distribution ay Frequency Distribution of the Final Math Grades of 20 Grade 7 Students for School Year 2019 to 2020. And this is an example of a frequency distribution for group data. Again, ang group data, it's a data that are bundled together into categories. Kung mapapansin natin dito, yung ating classes ay bundled together, may interval. Whereas kapag ungrouped data, individual lamang. Halimbawa, 76 lang, 77, 78, and so on. Which will make the table longer as compared to making it clustered together or bundled in a group data. Mas maiksi siya at mas malinis. That's the difference between a group and an ungrouped data. Usually, kapag ungrouped data, pwede siya kapag kaunti lamang yung data. But for a bigger number of data, for a set of raw data with bigger numbers, mas marami siya, dapat group data na yung ating gagamitin as frequency distribution. And that's it for our video for today, mga bata. Give this video a thumbs up kung natulungan kayo nito sa inyong lesson. Also, feel free to comment, subscribe to my YouTube channel, ang Teacher Mo sa Math, for more grade 7 content. Turn on the notification bell para lagi kayong updated kung meron na tayong bagong video. And of course, don't forget to share this video para mas marami pa akong mga grade 7 na batang tulad mo ang maaabot at maturuan, dahil ako si Ma'am Regine, ang Teacher Mo sa Math.